I am Linda, 68 years old, a single woman living in a beautiful coastal town in California. Standing here in my new villa, looking out at the garden I planted with my own hands, it still feels surreal sometimes. The unexpected call from my son, Adam, after years of silence, brought back memories I thought I had buried. He once laughed at me for having nothing. Now, looking around at what I have built, I wonder what you would do if your child, who once mocked you, suddenly wanted what is yours. If you are watching this, please subscribe, and let me know where you are watching from. Would you open your door or keep it firmly closed? The journey to this moment began 25 years ago. My husband Thomas died unexpectedly in a car accident when our son Adam was only 12 years old. I still remember that rainy Tuesday morning when two police officers knocked on our apartment door. Their faces told me everything before they even spoke. My world collapsed in an instant. Mrs. Johnson, we regret to inform you that your husband has been involved in a fatal accident on Highway 101. Those words tattooed themselves on my heart. Thomas had been my high school sweetheart, my rock, my partner in everything. We had been saving for our dream home while living in a modest 2-bedroom apartment. Now he was gone, leaving me alone to raise our son and somehow keep our lives from falling apart. The financial reality hit quickly. Thomas had some life insurance, but not enough to sustain us long term. I had been working part-time as an accounting clerk at a local business, but now I needed to work full-time and then some. Within weeks, I was working days at the accounting firm and evenings cleaning offices at a corporate building downtown. The routine was brutal but necessary. "Mom, why do you have to work so much?" Adam would ask when I missed his soccer games or came home exhausted at 9 p.m. "We need the money, sweetheart," I would explain, trying to hide how bone-tired I felt. "But I always want to hear about your day." For those first couple of years, Adam adjusted as well as could be expected. He was a good kid who understood we were going through hard times. He would help around the apartment, making simple dinners sometimes, or doing laundry without being asked. We became a team of sorts, two people against the world, holding on to each other. But as Adam entered his teenage years, things began to change. The sweet, understanding boy slowly transformed into someone I barely recognized. It started with small things, like complaints about the clothes I could afford to buy him. "Brandon has 3 pairs of the new Air Jordans, and I cannot even get one," he grumbled one day after school. "Those shoes cost more than our weekly grocery budget, Adam. I simply cannot afford them right now." The look of disgust on his face stung more than any words could have. It was the first time I saw him look at me as though our financial situation was a personal failing on my part, rather than a circumstance we were both navigating. By the time Adam was 16, his attitude had hardened even further. The small apartment that had once been our cozy refuge became a source of embarrassment for him. I noticed he stopped inviting friends over, always preferring to go to their houses instead. "Why cannot we live in a real house like normal people?" he asked once, after returning from a weekend at his friend Tyler's large suburban home. Tyler's mom is a single mom too, and she has a 4-bedroom house with a pool. Tyler's mom is a surgeon's sweetheart. I am an accounting clerk and office cleaner. We have different circumstances. "Maybe you should have gone to medical school then," he muttered under his breath, but loud enough for me to hear. The comment sliced through me. I had actually dreamed of becoming a veterinarian when I was younger, but had put those plans aside when I became pregnant with Adam at 20. Thomas and I had decided together that he would work while I stayed home with our baby, with plans for me to go back to school when Adam was older. That opportunity never came after Thomas died. Our old station wagon became another point of contention. The faithful blue Volvo had over 200,000 miles on it, but it was reliable transportation that I could not afford to replace. "Can you drop me off around the corner?" Adam asked one morning when I was driving him to school. "I do not want everyone seeing me get out of this piece of junk." I pulled over immediately, more hurt than angry. "This piece of junk has gotten us safely everywhere we needed to go for 10 years, Adam. Your father loved this car." "Well, Dad is not here anymore, is he?" Adam snapped, grabbing his backpack and slamming the door as he got out. I sat there for several minutes after he left, tears streaming down my face. The cruelty was so unexpected, so unlike the sweet boy I had raised. I told myself it was just teen angst, that he would grow out of it, that he was still grieving his father in his own way. I made excuses because that was easier than facing the possibility that I was losing my son to something I could not fight: materialism and status consciousness. Things reached a turning point when Adam was 19 and in his second year at the state university. I had scraped together every penny to help with his education, taking on extra work and going without so he could have this opportunity. He met Sophia Williams during a business class lecture. Sophia, the daughter of real estate developer Harold Williams, and his socialite wife Eleanor, lived in a different world than ours. The first time Adam brought Sophia to our apartment, I could see him looking at our home through her eyes, and it made him visibly uncomfortable. "This is cozy," Sophia said, with a smile that did not quite reach her eyes as she perched on the edge of our worn sofa. "It is small, I know," I replied, "but it has been home for a long time." "Mom likes to call it cozy when what she means is cramped," Adam said with a nervous laugh. "We cannot all live in mansions in Pacific Heights." "You should see our summer place in Lake Tahoe," Sophia responded. "Now that is what Dad calls cozy, even though it has 6 bedrooms. The shift in Adam became more pronounced after that. He began spending most weekends at Sophia's family home, returning with stories about their yacht, their country club memberships, their vacations to Europe. With each story, the distance between us grew. "Sophia's mom took us shopping today," he told me once, showing off an expensive watch. "She said every successful man needs a good timepiece." "That was very generous of her," I replied, noticing the watch probably cost more than 2 months of my rent. "Did you properly thank her?" "Of course. Eleanor understands the importance of appearances in the business world. She says first impressions are everything." The way he said Eleanor, so casual and intimate when he had never once called me Linda, spoke volumes about how he now saw himself as part of their world. "Mrs. Williams was asking about you," he continued. "She wondered why you never moved out of this apartment after Dad died. I did not really know what to tell her. You could have told her the truth, that I worked 2 jobs to put food on our table and clothes on your back, and that renting was what we could afford." Adam looked genuinely confused. "But that makes us sound so poor." In that moment, I realized my son had completely disconnected from our reality. In his mind, our modest lifestyle had become something shameful rather than the result of difficult circumstances and hard work. As his relationship with Sophia progressed, Adam began actively comparing me to Eleanor Williams, always finding me lacking. "Sophia's mom always looks so put together," he commented once when I was wearing my comfortable weekend clothes. She says a woman should always look her best, no matter the occasion. Eleanor Williams has a household staff and does not clean other people's offices for a living. I replied, my patience wearing thin. And quite frankly, I am too tired to care what she thinks about my sweatpants. That evening, I overheard Adam on the phone with Sophia. Yeah, she just does not try sometimes. It is like she has given up or something. Given up. After working myself to exhaustion for nearly a decade to provide for him, the words hurt more than I could express. The official engagement announcement came in the spring of Adam's senior year of college. He and Sophia had been dating for 2 years, and while I had my concerns about how her family had influenced my son, I wanted to be supportive. I received the news not directly from Adam, but from a formal invitation to an engagement party hosted by the Williams family. The party was held at the San Francisco Tennis Club, a place I had never set foot in before. I spent a week's pay on a new dress for the occasion, wanting to look presentable among San Francisco's elite. When I arrived, I immediately felt out of place. Women draped in designer clothes and fine jewelry air-kissed each other, while men in tailored suits discussed stock portfolios and real estate investments. Linda, there you are, Adam said when he finally spotted me standing awkwardly near the appetizer table. His greeting was polite but distant, as if I were a casual acquaintance rather than his mother. Come meet Sophia's aunt and uncle from New York. As he led me through the crowd, he leaned in and whispered, try not to mention the apartment or your cleaning job, okay? Just say you work in finance if anyone asks. The instructions stung, but I nodded, not wanting to create a scene. Throughout the evening, I watched as Adam charmed the room completely at ease in this environment that was so foreign to me. He spoke knowledgeably about wines, stock market trends, and European travel destinations, topics we had never discussed at home. It was as if he had created an entirely new persona, one that had no connection to the life we had shared. The wedding itself was even more extravagant than the engagement party. Held at the Williams Country Club, it featured ice sculptures, a 10-piece orchestra, and floral arrangements that must have cost thousands. I had contributed what I could to the wedding expenses, a sum that Adam dismissively called a nice gesture when I gave him the check. What hurt most was my placement at the reception. I was not seated at the main family table with the Williams, but at a distant table with some of Sophia's distant relatives and work colleagues. During the toasts, Harold Williams spoke at length about welcoming Adam into their family. From the moment we met Adam, we knew he belonged with us, Harold said, raising his champagne flute. Some people are simply born to succeed, and my new son-in-law is one of those rare individuals. The crowd applauded enthusiastically, while I sat quietly, invisible, in the celebration. Adam gave a speech thanking the Williams for their generosity and for showing him what family truly means. Not once did he acknowledge me or the sacrifices I had made for him. After the reception, I found a moment to speak with Adam alone, hoping to address the hurt I was feeling. I was surprised not to be seated with the family, I said carefully. And I thought you might have mentioned me in your speech. Adam's expression hardened. Mom, this was not the time for some emotional display. The Williams have connections to everyone who matters in this city. I need to make the right impression. I understand that, but I am your mother, the only family you had for most of your life. Look, Adam said with a sigh of irritation. I love you, but you need to understand the situation. This wedding cost more than you make in 5 years. The Williams have given me opportunities you cannot even imagine. Please do not make things awkward by being sensitive about seating arrangements. I stepped back, feeling as if he had physically struck me. I see. Well, congratulations again. Sophia is a lovely girl. Woman mom. Sophia is a sophisticated woman, not a girl. With that correction, he rejoined the party, leaving me alone with my realization that my son had not just married into another family, he had chosen them over me. In the months following the wedding, communication with Adam became increasingly sparse. When he did call, the conversations were brief and superficial. He and Sophia had moved into a luxurious condo purchased by her parents as a wedding gift, and he had taken a position at his father-in-law's development company. I continued to make efforts to maintain our relationship. I sent thoughtful gifts for their birthdays and anniversaries. I texted regularly with updates and questions about their lives. I suggested lunch dates or weekend visits whenever possible. Most of these attempts were met with delayed responses or polite rejections. "We are just so busy with work and social obligations," became Adam's standard excuse. Maybe next month would be better. Next month never seemed to come. 2 years after the wedding, Adam and Sophia finally invited me to their home for dinner. Their condo was in one of San Francisco's most exclusive buildings, with floor-to-ceiling windows, showcasing spectacular bay views. The furniture was clearly expensive, the art on the walls original, and the kitchen looked like something from a design magazine. "What do you think?" Adam asked, watching my reaction as I took in their home. "The kitchen renovation just finished last week. Cost a fortune, but Sophia deserves the best." "It is beautiful," I said sincerely. "You both must be very happy here." "We are, but it is already feeling a bit small," Sophia interjected. "Daddy says we should consider one of the new developments in Pacific Heights. There is a penthouse unit he thinks would be perfect for us." "This place is nearly 3,000 square feet," I said, confused. "How could you possibly need more space?" Adam and Sophia exchanged a look. "We are thinking about the future, Mom," Adam said. "When we start a family, we will need more room. Plus, it is about having the right address. Location is everything in this city." Throughout dinner, the conversation revolved around their recent European vacation, the celebrity chef whose restaurant they frequented, and the tech executives who lived in their building. I had little to contribute, as these experiences were so far removed from my daily life. "So how is your apartment, Linda?" Sophia asked eventually, as if suddenly remembering I existed. "Still in the same place. Yes, still there. It is comfortable for me." Adam shook his head slightly. "I still cannot believe you have been renting the same apartment for 20 years now. That is just throwing money away, Mom." "Not everyone has the option to buy in the San Francisco market," I replied evenly, "especially on a single income. But that is exactly the problem." Adam continued, warming to his topic. "You have never thought about investing or building equity. If you had bought even a tiny place 20 years ago, you would have hundreds of thousands in equity by now." I felt my cheeks grow warm with embarrassment and frustration. I was a bit busy making sure we had food and keeping a roof over our heads, Adam. Investment strategies were not exactly a priority. Adam seemed oblivious to my discomfort. "Well, it is never too late to make better financial choices. Though, at your age, your options are pretty limited now." 2 months later, they reciprocated by visiting my apartment. It was the first time Adam had been to my home in nearly 3 years, and Sophia's first visit since that awkward introduction during their dating days. I had spent days cleaning and buying new towels for the bathroom, and splurging on fresh flowers to brighten the space. The moment they walked in, I could see the judgment in their eyes. Adam looked around with a mixture of embarrassment and pity, while Sophia maintained a frozen smile that never reached her eyes. "You have rearranged things," Adam commented, though nothing major had changed since his college days. "Just trying to make the most of the space," I replied suddenly, seeing my home through their eyes, the worn carpet, the dated kitchen, the second-hand furniture I had maintained for decades. "It is very practical," Sophia offered, clearly struggling to find something positive to say. The visit was mercifully brief. They declined my offer of lunch, citing another engagement. As they were leaving, I overheard Sophia whisper to Adam, "I cannot believe you grew up in a place like this. It explains so much." The real breaking point came 6 months later. Adam had invited several of his colleagues from his father-in-law's company for a dinner party at their condo. I had been included as an afterthought, it seemed, since the invitation came just a day before the event. "It would be nice to have some family representation," Adam had said over the phone. "Sophia's parents are in Aspen this weekend." During the dinner, the conversation turned to real estate and investments, a common topic among Adam's new social circle. One of the men, a finance executive named James, asked me about my own property investments. Before I could answer, Adam jumped in with a laugh. "Mom is still renting at 60. Can you believe it? Never owned a thing in her life." The table grew awkwardly quiet. I forced a smile. My priorities were elsewhere when Adam was growing up. Mom had to work 2 jobs after my dad died. Adam continued, as if sharing an amusing anecdote. "She was an accountant by day and cleaned offices by night. Talk about a lack of career advancement strategy." James looked uncomfortable. "That actually sounds incredibly dedicated. Supporting a family alone is not easy." Adam missed the reproof in James's tone. "Sure, but there is a difference between hard work and smart work, right? Mom just never figured out how to leverage herself into a better position." I excused myself to the restroom, needing a moment to compose myself. As I walked down the hallway, I could hear Adam and Sophia talking in low voices in the kitchen, where they were preparing dessert. "Your mom seems nice," Sophia was saying, "but I worry about her future. Has she saved anything for retirement?" "Doubtful," Adam replied. "She has never been good with money. We might need to look into some senior living options in a few years. Nothing fancy, obviously, just somewhere basic where she would be taken care of." "Would we need to support her financially?" Sophia asked, concern evident in her voice. "Probably. She will have some Social Security, but it would not cover much. Maybe we should talk to my dad about it. See if there are any affordable facilities his company knows about." I stood, frozen in the hallway, my heart pounding. They were discussing my future as if I were an inconvenient problem to solve, a financial burden to minimize. Not once did they consider asking me about my own plans or wishes. When I returned to the table, I smiled and participated in the conversation as best I could. But inside, I felt numb. The final blow came as guests were leaving. Adam pulled me aside, his expression serious. "Mom, I have been meaning to talk to you about something. Do you still have Dad's watches and Mom's jewelry?" "Yes, of course. Those are precious memories for me." Adam nodded. "The thing is, those pieces are probably worth quite a bit now, especially Dad's vintage Omega. You might consider selling them and putting the money towards some kind of investment. They are just sitting in a drawer, and you could really use the capital." I stared at him, unable to process what I was hearing. He was suggesting I sell my most treasured keepsakes of my marriage items I had planned to pass down to him someday for their cash value. Those things are not for sale, Adam. They are all I have left of your father. Adam sighed, clearly disappointed. This is exactly what I mean about emotional versus rational financial decisions, Mom. Sentimentality does not pay the bills. I left shortly after the weight of realization heavy on my shoulders. The son I had sacrificed everything for now saw me as nothing more than a financial liability with poor decision-making skills. Somewhere along the way, I had lost him completely. I spent that night sitting on my living room floor, surrounded by old photo albums and mementos of our family life. Images of a smiling, gap-toothed Adam on his first bicycle. A Father's Day card he had made in 3rd grade, declaring Thomas the best dad ever. A family trip to Disneyland when Adam was 10, the last vacation we took before Thomas died. Tears flowed freely as I confronted the painful truth. The loving relationship I had tried so desperately to maintain was gone, replaced by something hollow and transactional. Despite everything, I had given all the sacrifices I had made. My son now looked at me with a mixture of embarrassment and pity. In his eyes, and in the eyes of his new family, I was a failure. The pain was unlike anything I had felt since Thomas died. A different kind of grief, but no less devastating. I cried until no more tears would come, until exhaustion finally overcame me, and I fell asleep there on the floor, surrounded by memories of happier times. Morning brought a strange sense of clarity. As sunlight streamed through my window, I found myself pulling out the old trunk where I kept Thomas's personal effects. It had been years since I had gone through these items thoroughly, the process always too painful to complete. Inside were his favorite books, his collection of vinyl records, the leather jacket I had always loved seeing him in. Beneath these, in a manila envelope I had only briefly looked at after his death, were various financial documents and papers. With a new sense of purpose, I began to examine them carefully. Among the insurance policies and our modest savings account information was another envelope sealed and labeled investments. With trembling hands, I opened it to find stock certificates for a tech company Thomas had apparently invested in during the early 90s. I vaguely remembered him mentioning putting a small amount of money into some startup his college friend was involved with. But in the chaos after his death, I had completely forgotten about it. The company name was immediately recognizable, one of the giants of the modern tech industry. I sat very still, trying to process what I was seeing. Could these possibly still be valid? What would they be worth? After all these years, that afternoon, I visited a financial advisor, recommended by a friend from my accounting job. The meeting changed everything. Mrs. Johnson, these certificates represent a significant investment, the advisor explained, her expression serious. The company has split its stock multiple times over the years, and the value has increased exponentially. Furthermore, they have been paying dividends, which would have been reinvesting automatically. What exactly does that mean in terms of value? I asked, barely able to breathe. When she showed me the estimated figure, I thought I might faint. The amount was more than I had earned in the past 20 years combined. Your husband made an extremely wise investment, she continued. With proper management, this could provide you with financial security for the rest of your life. I left her office in a daze, my mind racing with possibilities I had never allowed myself to consider. Financial security, freedom from constant worry, a chance to live rather than merely survive. Over the next few weeks, I consulted with financial advisors, a lawyer, and a tax specialist to understand my options and obligations. With their guidance, I developed a clear plan for my future, one that prioritized my needs and wishes for the first time in decades. The decision to cut ties with Adam was not made lightly. I spent many nights wrestling with the implications, wondering if there was any way to salvage our relationship. But each time I revisited our recent interactions, I came to the same conclusion: the bond between us had already been severed by his actions and attitudes. I decided not to inform him about my financial windfall or my plans. Given his recent behavior and comments, I had little doubt he would feel entitled to part of this inheritance, despite having dismissed and devalued my connection to his father for years. My first step was digital disconnection. I deleted my barely used social media accounts, changed my email address, and got a new phone number. I informed my employer that I would be retiring, giving them 2 months' notice to find a replacement. I began quietly selling or donating most of my possessions, keeping only what had true sentimental value or practical use for my new life. With the help of my new financial team, I identified a beautiful property in a quiet coastal town 2 hours south of San Francisco. A modest but elegant villa with a garden close enough to amenities, but private enough to provide peace. The purchase was completed quickly and discreetly, using a trust my lawyer had established to maintain my privacy. The day I turned in my keys to the apartment I had called home for 25 years was emotional but liberating. As I drove away for the last time, I felt a mixture of sadness for the memories left behind and excitement for the unknown future ahead. My new home became my sanctuary and project. For the first time in my adult life, I had the freedom to create exactly the environment I wanted, without compromise or financial constraint. I painted walls in colors that made me happy, planted a garden with flowers and vegetables I had always wanted to grow, and furnished rooms with pieces that spoke to my personal taste, rather than merely being affordable or practical. Each morning, I would wake to the sound of birdsong rather than city traffic. I would make myself a leisurely cup of coffee and sit on my patio, planning my day with no pressure or obligations. The luxury of time was perhaps even more valuable than the financial resources that had made this new life possible. I enrolled in a watercolor painting class at the local community center, something I had always wanted to try but never had time for. To my surprise, I showed some natural talent, and the process of creating art became a form of therapy. Through broad strokes and blending colors, I found myself processing years of suppressed emotions, working through feelings of disappointment, anger, and loss. The garden became another source of healing. There was something profoundly satisfying about working with the earth, planting seeds and watching them grow. It became a metaphor for my own life, the idea that it was never too late to put down new roots and flourish. Slowly, I began to form new connections in my community. My painting instructor, Marjorie, became a friend who introduced me to her book club. Through that group, I met several women in similar life stages, many with their own stories of reinvention after loss or major life changes. "I never would have guessed you were new to town," remarked Diana, a retired literature professor, after a particularly lively book discussion. "You seem so at home here." "I feel at home," I replied, realizing the truth of it as I spoke. "More than I have in a very long time." As months passed, I found myself rebuilding not just a new daily life, but a new identity, no longer defined primarily as a mother or widow or struggling worker. I was discovering who Linda Johnson truly was when given the space and resources to thrive. I enrolled in a cooking class and discovered a passion for Mediterranean cuisine. I joined a local hiking group and explored the beautiful coastal trails in my area. I volunteered at the community library, sharing my love of reading with children during story hours. For my 67th birthday, I gave myself the gift of travel, taking a 2-week trip to Italy, a destination Thomas and I had always dreamed of visiting together. Walking the streets of Florence and Rome alone was intimidating at first, but ultimately empowering. I found myself becoming more confident, more willing to step outside my comfort zone. "You have a glow about you," my new friend Carol commented when I returned and showed her my travel photos. "You look 10 years younger than when you first moved here." I felt younger in many ways. The constant stress that had been my companion for decades had lifted, allowing space for joy and spontaneity to return. The chronic back pain and headaches that I had attributed to aging had diminished significantly, likely more related to stress than years. Not once during this period of transformation did I reach out to Adam, nor did he attempt to contact me. I had informed no one from my previous life about my move or change in circumstances. It was a clean break, painful, but necessary for my healing. Sometimes I would look at old photos and feel a pang of sadness for what might have been the relationship I had hoped to have with my son. But increasingly, those moments became fewer and farther between as my new life filled with meaningful activities and authentic connections. I had just celebrated my first full year in my new home when the past came knocking quite literally at my door. It began with a phone call from an unfamiliar number. I almost did not answer, as I had grown cautious about unsolicited calls, but something compelled me to pick up. "Hello," I said, expecting perhaps a telemarketer or wrong number. "Mom." The voice was instantly recognizable despite the year of silence. "Is that you?" My heart seized in my chest. "Adam." "Yes, it is me. How did you get this number?" "It was not easy," he replied, a note of accusation in his voice. "Why did you disappear? I had to hire someone to track you down after discovering you had moved without telling anyone." The idea that he had been investigating me was unsettling. "I needed a change, Adam. I retired and decided to relocate." "Retired?" He sounded genuinely shocked. "How can you afford to retire? And Patricia Nelson, at your old job, said you bought a house somewhere on the coast. That cannot possibly be true." Patricia had been a colleague at the accounting firm, apparently not as discreet as I had hoped. "My circumstances have changed, Adam. I am doing well." There was a long pause on the line. "What circumstances? Did you win the lottery or something?" "No, nothing like that. Look, Adam, why are you calling after all this time? We have not spoken in over a year." "I have been busy," he said dismissively. "Work has been crazy, and Sophia and I have had a lot of social obligations. But family is still important. I was worried when I could not reach you." His words rang hollow, the concern clearly secondary to his curiosity about my financial situation. "I appreciate the thought, but as you can hear, I am perfectly fine." "Where exactly are you living now?" Patricia mentioned Cypress Cove. "Is that right?" I hesitated, uncomfortable with his probing questions. "Yes, I am in that area. It is lovely here. I have some business in Santa Cruz next week. Maybe I could stop by and see your new place. What is the address?" The request seemed innocent enough, but something in his tone made me wary. Still, After a moment's consideration, I gave him my address. Perhaps it was a desire for closure, or a small, stubborn hope that seeing my new life might change something between us. "Great," he said, suddenly warm and enthusiastic. "I will plan to stop by next Thursday afternoon around 3. Looking forward to it, Mom." The call ended, and I sat in my sunny kitchen, feeling strangely unsettled. After all this time, why the sudden interest? I tried to push aside my suspicions and focus on the possibility that this could be a new beginning for our relationship. Thursday arrived, and with it came a mixture of anticipation and dread. I had spent the morning preparing, tidying the already clean house and baking fresh cookies, the way I used to when Adam was a child. At precisely 3:10, the doorbell rang. Adam stood on my porch, looking polished in an expensive suit, his expression a mixture of curiosity and something else I could not quite identify. Behind him was a luxury car parked in my driveway. "Mom," he said, leaning in for a brief, formal hug. "You look well." "Thank you, Adam. Please come in." He stepped into the foyer, and I watched as his eyes widened, taking in the high ceilings, the elegant furnishings, the view through the French doors to the garden beyond. "This is your house?" he asked, not bothering to hide his astonishment. "Yes, I have been here for about a year now. But this must be properties in this area are going for well over $1 million. How could you possibly afford this?" The disbelief in his voice was almost comical. "Would you like a tour?" I offered, ignoring his question. I showed him through the house, watching as his expression shifted from shock to calculation with each room we entered. The spacious kitchen, with its marble countertops, the cozy library, lined with bookshelves, the master bedroom, with its adjoining spa bathroom, the guest rooms I had furnished, but never used. "And out here is my favorite part," I said, leading him onto the back patio that overlooked the terraced garden, and beyond that a glimpse of the ocean. "I have been learning gardening. Those tomato plants are my special pride." Adam barely glanced at the garden. "Mom, you need to tell me what is going on. How did you go from a rental apartment to this? Did someone help you buy this place? Are you in some kind of financial trouble?" I smiled slightly. "No, Adam, no trouble at all. I made some good investments." "What investments? You never had money to invest. Is someone taking advantage of you?" His concern was clearly not for my welfare, but for the inexplicable wealth I now possessed. "Actually, it turns out your father made an investment before he died that appreciated considerably over the years. I only discovered it recently." Adam's face changed instantly. "Dad left investments. What kind? Why am I just hearing about this now? That should have been part of his estate, part of my inheritance." And there it was, the true nature of his sudden reappearance in my life. Not concern, not a desire to reconnect, but the scent of money. "Your father left everything to me, Adam, as his wife. The investment was in my name after his death." He paced the patio, running a hand through his carefully styled hair. "But morally, that money is as much mine as yours. Dad would have wanted me to benefit from his foresight. You should have told me about this immediately. The way you told me about your promotion at work, or your trip to Europe, or your move to a new condo." I kept my voice even, refusing to be drawn into an argument. "We have not exactly been in regular communication, Adam." He ignored the point. "How much are we talking about? The investment, I mean. That is not really your concern." "Of course it is my concern." His composure slipped, revealing the entitlement beneath. "I am your son, your only family. I have a right to know about family assets." "You made it very clear that we were no longer family in any meaningful sense, Adam. You have your new family now, the one that showed you what family truly means, as you said in your wedding speech. The reminder of his own words seemed to catch him off guard. He changed tactics, his expression softening. Mom, I know we have had our differences, but family is still family. I have been thinking a lot about reconnecting, getting back to a better place in our relationship. This situation just took me by surprise. I wanted to believe him. Some part of me, the mother who had loved him unconditionally for decades, wanted desperately to see genuine feeling in his words. But the evidence of the past years spoke louder than this sudden declaration. We stood in silence for a moment, the ocean breeze rustling the flowers in my garden. Then Adam turned and walked slowly around the patio, examining the outdoor furniture, the built-in grill, the small fountain bubbling peacefully in the corner. This place is really something, he said finally. Perfect, actually. Thank you. I have put a lot of thought into making it exactly what I wanted. He nodded, then turned to face me with an expression I recognized all too well, the one he used when he was about to ask for something significant. You know, Mom, Sophia and I have been talking about starting a family soon. We have been looking for a place outside the city, somewhere with good schools and more space. I waited, already seeing where this was headed. This house would be perfect for that. A great place to raise kids away from the city, but not too remote. And it has plenty of room for a growing family. I am happy with it as my home, I replied carefully. Adam waved a dismissive hand. But that is just it, Mom. It is way too much house for just one person. What do you need all these bedrooms for? They are just sitting empty. They are not empty. They are furnished exactly as I want them for guests or for my own use. But be practical. You are living alone in a 4-bedroom house with multiple bathrooms and all this land to maintain. It does not make sense. It makes perfect sense for the life I want to live, Adam. His patience was visibly wearing thin. Look, I am trying to be reasonable here. This house is wasted on just you. Sophia fell in love with this area when I showed her some pictures online. She thinks it would be the perfect place to raise our children close to nature, but still within commuting distance to the city. I am glad Sophia approves of my choice of location, I said, unable to keep a hint of sarcasm from my voice. What I am saying, Adam continued, his tone becoming more insistent, is that this house makes much more sense for us than for you. You could find a nice condo nearby, something easier to maintain. We could handle the transfer of the property, make it really simple for you. I stared at him, momentarily speechless. He was not suggesting a visit or even moving to the same community. He was explicitly asking me to give him my home. Adam, this is my house. I bought it. I designed the interior. I planted that garden. It is not for sale, especially not to someone who has shown no interest in my life until discovering I had something of value. His expression hardened. That is not fair. I have been busy building my career, my marriage. Too busy to return phone calls. Too busy to remember birthdays. Too busy to include me in your life in any meaningful way. That is ancient history, Mom. I am talking about family, about your future grandchildren growing up in this beautiful place. The manipulation was so transparent, it was almost painful to witness. My home is not available, Adam. I suggest you and Sophia look at real estate listings if you are interested in moving to this area. His facade of reasonableness crumbled. This is ridiculous. You are being completely selfish. What are you going to do with all this space? You will probably fall and break a hip trying to maintain this place on your own. I am 68, not 98, and in excellent health. But thank you for your concern. You know, he said, his voice taking on an edge. I have been doing some research. If Dad made investments that appreciated significantly, and if they were marital assets, I might have a legal claim to part of that as his heir. The threat was clear. Feel free to consult with a lawyer, Adam. I already have extensively. His face flushed with anger. So that is it. After everything, you are just going to hoard this house and Dad's money all to yourself. What happened to family first? I think you made your feelings about family perfectly clear when you told your colleagues how pathetic it was that I worked 2 jobs to put food on our table. Or when you suggested I sell your father's watches to make some quick cash. Or when you discussed putting me in a care facility because I was a financial burden. Adam had the grace to look momentarily ashamed. You heard that conversation with Sophia that was taken out of context. Was it? Because it seemed pretty clear to me, as did many other conversations over the years, where you made it abundantly clear that my value to you was directly related to my financial status and social standing. That is not true, he protested, but weakly. It is true, Adam, and it broke my heart, but it also opened my eyes. I have spent my life giving everything I had to you, and somewhere along the way, you learned to see that sacrifice as something shameful rather than something worthy of respect. We stood facing each other, the gulf between us wider than ever, despite our physical proximity. Adam's expression shifted, calculation replacing anger. It is a beautiful home, Mom, he said, his voice softer now. Sophia would love it here. Our children, your grandchildren, would thrive in this environment. I am sure they would. Many families thrive here. There are several properties for sale in the area, but none exactly like this one. His gaze swept across the garden, the patio back to the house. It is perfect for us. Surely you can see that, as a mother, do not you want to give your child the best possible life? I already did that, Adam. I gave you everything I had for decades. This house, this life I have built, is finally something for me. Something in his expression changed, hardened. So that is your final answer. You would rather keep this huge house for yourself than help your only son provide a beautiful home for his family. This is my home, Adam, not yours, not Sophia's, mine. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. You know I could contest Dad's will, argue that you concealed assets. It would be messy public. Do you really want that kind of stress at your age? The threat was explicit now, but instead of fear, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Are you threatening me, Adam? In my own home? I am trying to make you see reason. His voice rose sharply. This house should be ours. It is wasted on you living here alone. I think it is time for you to leave. I am not going anywhere until we resolve this. You are being completely unreasonable. I reached into my pocket for my phone. If you do not leave my property immediately, I will call the police and report you for trespassing. He laughed in disbelief. You would call the police on your own son. You are bluffing. Maintaining eye contact, I dialed 911 and put the phone to my ear. Hello? Yes. I need to report an unwanted person on my property who is refusing to leave. Adam's eyes widened as he realized I was serious. He grabbed my arm, trying to take the phone. Hang up. Are you crazy? I pulled away from his grip, continuing to speak to the dispatcher. Yes, the address is 428 Ocean View Drive. The individual is my estranged son, who is making threats and refusing to leave when asked. Yes, I will wait until officers arrive. You will regret this, Adam hissed, backing away toward the house. This is not over. I followed at a distance as he stormed through the house to the front door. Officers will be here in minutes, Adam. I suggest you be gone before they arrive. He paused at the door, turning to face me one last time. You chose a house over your own son. Remember that when you are sitting in this big, empty place all alone. No, Adam, you chose status and materialism over our relationship long ago. I am just finally accepting that reality. With a final glare, he yanked open the door and left slamming it behind him. Through the window, I watched him get into his expensive car and speed away, gravel spraying from under the tires. When the police arrived, minutes later, I explained the situation calmly. They took my statement, advised me on restraining orders if the harassment continued, and promised to patrol the area more frequently in the coming days. After they left, I sat on my patio as evening approached, watching the sunset over the ocean. The garden I had tenderly cultivated continued to bloom around me, indifferent to the human drama that had just unfolded. For the first time since Adam had called, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had happened. The final severance of my relationship with my only child, the threats, the naked greed that had replaced any natural filial affection. Tears came, but they were different from the ones I had shed in my apartment a year earlier. These were tears of release, of finally letting go of a relationship that had become toxic and harmful. They were painful, but cleansing. As darkness fell and stars appeared above the ocean, I made peace with my decision. The path ahead would be one I walked alone, but it would be a path of my own choosing, unburdened by emotional manipulation or false obligation. The weeks following Adam's visit were quiet. I half expected legal threats or continued harassment, but none came. Perhaps he had consulted a lawyer and learned that his claims held no merit. Or perhaps his pride had been too wounded by my rejection to pursue the matter further. Either way, I found myself settling back into the rhythms of my new life, though with a heightened appreciation for the peace and autonomy I had created. The confrontation, painful as it was, had provided a kind of closure I had not realized I needed. My painting instructor noticed the change in my work. There is something different in your brushstrokes lately, Linda, Marjorie commented during a class. More confidence, more boldness in your color choices. She was right. Just as the garden had become a metaphor for my new beginnings, my artwork had become a reflection of my emotional journey. The early paintings had been tentative safe. The recent ones showed more willingness to take risks, to express stronger emotions. I had a difficult confrontation recently, I explained. With my son, I think it helped me realize that I have been holding back in many areas of my life, not just in my painting. Marjorie nodded thoughtfully. Boundaries are hard to establish, especially with family, but they are necessary for growth sometimes. That is exactly it, I agreed. I spent so many years trying to maintain a relationship that had become unhealthy. Letting go has been painful, but liberating. The healing process continued in unexpected ways. I joined a support group for parents estranged from adult children, discovering I was far from alone in my experience. The stories shared in that circle, though unique in their details, echoed common themes of entitlement, materialism, and the painful drift of values between generations. The hardest part, shared Eleanor, a woman in her 70s, whose 2 daughters had cut contact after she refused to fund their extravagant lifestyles, is letting go of the fantasy of what the relationship should have been. We all have this idealized image of family harmony, and accepting the reality can feel like a personal failure. Her words resonated deeply with me. I had clung to an idealized version of motherhood for decades, one where sacrifice would naturally be met with gratitude and respect. Accepting that this was not my reality had indeed felt like failing at the most important role of my life. But through these conversations and my own reflection, I began to recognize that the true failure would have been continuing in a relationship that required me to diminish myself, to accept disrespect, to prioritize my son's greed over my own well-being. 6 months after Adam's visit, I received a formal letter from his lawyer outlining a proposed family settlement regarding Thomas's investment assets. The letter was coldly professional, but transparent in its intent, suggesting that a reasonable division of assets would avoid unnecessary family conflict and potential litigation. My own lawyer responded with equal professionalism, providing documentation that clearly established the investment as my sole legal property, and pointing out that the statute of limitations for contesting Thomas's will had long since expired. The matter was closed before it truly began. There were moments, particularly during holidays, or when I saw families together in restaurants or parks, when the absence of my son and the grandchildren I would likely never know created a pang of sadness. I allowed myself to feel these emotions without judgment, recognizing them as natural grief for possibilities that would never materialize. But increasingly, those moments were balanced by a profound appreciation for the life I had created. My home continued to evolve, reflecting my passions and interests. My garden flourished under my care. My friendships deepened, creating a chosen family that provided connection and support. One evening, as I sat with friends from my book club on my patio, enjoying wine and conversation as the sun set, Diana raised her glass in a spontaneous toast. "To Linda," she said, smiling warmly, "who reminds us all that it is never too late to begin again, to create a life that truly reflects who we are, rather than who others expect us to be." The words brought tears to my eyes, not of sadness, but of recognition. In losing what I had desperately tried to hold on to, I had gained something I never knew I needed: the freedom to discover my authentic self after a lifetime of defining myself primarily through others. The journey had not been easy. The wounds of rejection and betrayal would never completely disappear, but they had scarred over, becoming part of my story rather than defining it. I had learned that true family is not always defined by blood, but by mutual respect, support, and genuine care. I had learned that setting boundaries is not selfish, but essential for healthy relationships. Most importantly, I had learned that even after decades of putting myself last, it was possible to reclaim my life and discover joy on my own terms. As my friends chatted around me, the garden glowed in the soft evening light, and the distant sound of waves provided a gentle soundtrack. I felt a profound sense of peace. This was not the life I had planned or expected, but it was a good life, rich with meaning and possibility. It was at long last truly mine. What would you do if you were faced with a similar situation? Would you maintain your boundaries or give in to family pressure? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you found value in my story, please subscribe to hear more life experiences and lessons learned. Share this video with someone who might need to be reminded that it is never too late to start over and create boundaries. Thank you for listening, and remember, your worth is not determined by others' appreciation of your sacrifices.